Long before cities rose or fields were tilled, humans wandered landscapes where survival was the only law that mattered. They lived not in comfort but in constant negotiation with a world that offered no guarantees of tomorrow. Small bands of 20 or 30 souls moved across vast terrains following herds and seasonal rhythms. They carried everything they owned on their backs, possessing nothing that could not be abandoned in moments. When illness struck, there were no physicians, only the accumulated wisdom of elders and desperate hope. They built temporary shelters from branches and hides, huddling together against wind that cut like blades. The tribe's medicine keeper knew which roots might ease pain and which leaves could slow bleeding. Her hands moved with practiced uncertainty over fevered bodies, whispering words that may have been prayer. Disease spread quickly through small groups living in close quarters with limited understanding of contagion. Sweating bodies pressed together for warmth, unknowingly sharing more than heat in the darkness. They believed illness came from angry spirits or broken taboos, treating symptoms with ritual scarification. Sharp stones opened skin to release evil, leaving scars that told stories of survival. Famine arrived when herds migrated early or harsh weather destroyed the plants they depended upon. Bellies cramped with emptiness while eyes scanned horizons for any sign of sustenance moving or growing. Desperation drove them to consume bark, roots, and insects they normally avoided with disgust. Children learned to chew leather strips for hours, extracting whatever nutrition hide might reluctantly surrender. When food disappeared entirely, the weakest members of the group began to fade first. Elders and infants succumbed while others made horrible calculations about who deserved the last morsels. They cracked open every bone with stone hammers, desperate for the rich marrow hidden inside. Nothing edible was wasted, not sinew, not cartilage, not the bitter contents of stomachs. Survival meant constant movement, tracking animal migrations across hundreds of miles of dangerous terrain. Feet bled through rough hide wrappings as they pursued their only reliable source of protein. Sometimes spears missed their marks and prey escaped, leaving hunters to return empty-handed. Faces of hungry families waited by dying fires, hoping for meat that would not come. When fortune smiled and animals fell to their crude weapons, every scrap was divided carefully. Hierarchy determined who ate first, but even leaders left portions for the weakest members. Cold seasons brought different challenges as game became scarce and edible plants disappeared entirely. Bodies burned precious fat reserves while minds counted the days until warmth might return. When earth hardened like stone, digging for roots became impossible and hidden caches spoiled. Fingernails cracked against frozen soil while stomachs contracted with familiar, gnawing emptiness. Illness and hunger often worked together, weakening bodies until the smallest infection became fatal. Family members took turns sitting beside the dying, offering presents when healing was beyond reach. Death was handled practically with shallow graves scratched from hard earth using pointed sticks. Bodies were wrapped in available hides before being returned to ground that might remember them. Survival depended on cooperation within small groups where every individual's skills and labor mattered. Arguments were settled quickly because exile meant death, and death meant one less pair of hands. Those who could not keep pace with the group faced abandonment on hostile landscapes. Broken bones or failing eyesight became death sentences that no amount of affection could prevent. Children learned essential skills through observation and mimicry, understanding that mistakes could prove fatal. Small hands practiced knapping flint while young voices memorized the locations of water sources. Females often possessed the deepest knowledge of plant medicine and seasonal patterns of growth. Their expertise in gathering and preparation frequently meant the difference between feast and starvation. Pregnant women faced additional dangers as growing babies demanded nutrition from already depleted bodies. Many births ended in tragedy when mothers lacked strength to survive the ordeal. Labor came without medical assistance, attended only by experienced women armed with folk knowledge. Survival rates were low, and successful births were celebrated as victories against overwhelming odds. Children who lost parents faced uncertain futures dependent on the tribe's willingness to share resources. Extra mouths to feed during famines became burdens that communities could not always bear. Life followed natural cycles of abundance and scarcity that repeated with predictable cruelty year after year. Spring brought hope, summer offered plenty, autumn demanded preparation, and winter tested everything. Clean water sources determined travel routes and camping locations, but drought could force dangerous journeys. Contaminated streams brought illness that spread rapidly through groups with no immunity or treatment. Maintaining fire required constant vigilance as flames meant warmth, cooking, and protection from predators. When fires died in rain or wind, rekindling them from scratch demanded skills few possessed. Darkness brought different terrors as hungry carnivores stalked human camps seeking easy prey. Sleep came fitfully while ears stayed alert for sounds that might signal approaching death. Desperate hunger sometimes led to consuming unfamiliar plants with toxic properties that caused convulsions. Knowledge of safe foods was literally a matter of life and death passed down through generations. Stone knapping created the instruments of survival, but broken tools during critical hunts meant disaster. Skilled craftsmen were treasured members whose expertise kept everyone alive through technological advantage. Following resources meant abandoning temporary homes repeatedly, carrying only essential possessions across vast distances. Feet developed thick calluses while backs bent under loads that never seemed lighter. Wounded hunters became liabilities when mobility determined survival and medical care remained primitive. Sprained ankles or broken ribs often meant slow death from inability to contribute. When hunting failed, humans competed with vultures and hyenas for carrion left by successful predators. Pride meant nothing when children cried from hunger and bones needed stripping clean. High temperatures brought hallucinations where spirits spoke and ancestors offered guidance from beyond death. Recovery meant rejoining reality, while failure meant permanent departure to whatever lay beyond. Trial and error with plant medicines sometimes brought relief but often caused additional suffering. Each generation learned from previous mistakes, building knowledge through tragedy and occasional miraculous recovery. Late winter brought the cruelest tests when stored foods ran low and spring growth remained months away. Bodies consumed their own muscle while minds planned impossible journeys toward rumored plenty. Extreme desperation occasionally drove groups to consider consuming their own dead during impossible famines. Few spoke of such things afterward, carrying guilt that weighed heavier than hunger. Discovery of unexpected food sources like honey trees or nut groves brought temporary celebration. Grateful hands filled bellies while voices offered thanks to whatever gods might be listening. Those who survived learned harsh lessons about resource management and risk assessment that shaped behavior. Paranoia about future scarcity became survival strategy, never fully trusting apparent abundance. Bodies that endured carried permanent marks of their struggles against disease and starvation. Each line and blemish told stories of battles won against odds that claimed countless others.